we're talking about infinite things. There are no words to describe it. And not just by me, but a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's, you know, when there was a meeting on this morning, I mean, you know, there are no words to describe it. That's the complication. There are no words to describe it.
Obviously,
So let's just try to keep moving forward. This is a major step forward. Well,
hello, Eric. It's Adam here.
okay, yeah, you're there.
How are you doing? All right?
Oh, yeah, well, kind of busy. I'm getting ready for the next 3,000 miles on the car.
Huh? That's a long way.
Yeah, well, that's what it does.
Well, thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today about your Advanced Seismic Warning System and the fundraiser a little bit. I appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone else does. A little bit of distortion in the background there, but maybe I can...
Oh, this microphone's burning out on me. Let me give it a whack, and I have to replace it. Hold on.
All right. I might be able to filter it out with an equalizer. I don't know what frequencies it's going to be at.
Well, these things tend to peak at around 1,000 cycles. I think I got rid of the bad microphone crackling.
Yeah, that sounds much better. Well done. Well, I mean, I understand that you'd like to give a special thank you to our anonymous benefactor who was kind enough to donate $10,000.
Oh, yeah, well, it's not just me giving the thanks. There's lots of people giving thanks. This is like a how would you say, celebratory?
Yeah, celebratory.
Celebrating event.
Yeah, I think it's almost 100 funders already, 100 donors now, and that's not including PayPal. So that's pretty amazing. It really takes the words out of my mouth. I just don't know what to say.
Well, it makes stuff happen. That's what's important, and that's what it takes. So
yeah,
this is a major step forward.
Well, it needs to happen, right? I mean, I understood it took you over a decade to put this apparatus together.
What's that now? I missed 2 words out of that.
Sorry, I understand it took you over a decade to put this apparatus together.
Oh, this is the result of work I started in my senior year in high school.
So quite a lot longer than just a decade.
It took 30 years to basically develop the Landers facility, and then it took 10 years of that 30 years to build all the equipment, and then once it was done, it vanished.
And that would be
there's
Landers,
no way
right?
I could ever really duplicate that. We're like us on a number of different fronts now, where the HF part of it's going to go, and where the low frequency part's going to go, and I'm not 19 years old anymore. But it hasn't, nothing's really changed. But then the thing is, statistically, how much longer do you have to do things? I don't have another 30 years statistically.
Right.
So it's kind of a big scramble. I have no idea. It's after the situation at Landers, it basically left me disabled, and that's why I'm on Social Security, because it's just the fuse blew. So I'm scrambling to put it all back together again, and but this time I don't have to do it all myself.
No, you've got some help.
On food stamps.
Right.
I don't have to do it all myself.
No, I mean you've got a good sizable chunk of money there to help towards the government bond and the parts that you think that you're going to need. So, I mean, it's a very good positive start, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm more than happy. It cancels out a lot of other negativities that I have to deal with in my life all the time. There's always there's somebody around that's always trying to throw a hand grenade in the middle of your operation, and there's one after another. It's endless. So we'd have to fight that off in another neighborhood, and then we just went through a big battle with it here, and
that sounds a little bit familiar.
It's not all easy.
It sounds a little bit familiar, isn't that what Tesla went through when he was trying to get his wireless Telluric ground system off the ground, the metaphorical ground? Didn't he have the same?
Well, just one thing that really screwed him up was just the sheer cost of it. which was covered, but then Tesla introduced his own complications into the situation, and I'm going through this right now because I'm getting ready for this next presentation I'm going to do. So I have to go back to all the original stuff, because if I don't understand the details, then I can't explain it to anybody else. And the whole electrical theory, as it's written and published, is completely useless. Yeah, what I'm finding is you can't blame Heaviside and you can't blame Steinmetz or all these people, because they were the ones that started it.
Right.
So Tesla had the vision, but he didn't have the engineering ability, and there wasn't somebody that could mediate the situation between Tesla and the financiers to keep the system on track so that it could have produced the Telluric radio system that Morgan wanted to pay for. Tesla wanted to keep experimenting. He became too infatuated with the wireless power transmission, which he did not have perfected to engineering reality yet.
Can you tap your microphone
there? Microphone another whack. Hold on, I get another whack. No, it's not going for it. This is the last shot I'm getting out of it. One more try.
It's on its last legs there.
Okay, I think we're stuck with it.
All right. Well, I can probably filter out some of it. Oh, there you go.
It went away.
It's gone away. Well, I mean, I believe you said before that the signals that the system you've got can detect, they're electrostatic. In other words, non-electromagnetic waves, as Tesla theorized about. Aren't there other applications that exist for your earthquake warning technology?
I don't quite understand your question, though. Something other than using it for earthquake observation?
Aren't there other applications that exist?
Oh, yeah, for broadcasting and communications. So the first people that are most interested in this is the maritime, the ships and submarines and all that type of stuff. That's the natural first application of it.
Well, I mean, you said the early warning system you've developed could detect quakes as long as 48 hours in advance. Now, that's a lot longer warning, hands down, than like $1 million projects that exist today.
Oh, there's stuff that exists today. It's a joke. It's something to laugh at. It's just all these people. All they're doing is they're just making money. That's all it is. It's just a way that money passes from one set of hands to another to keep it moving.
But I mean, what you've managed to do is with kind of older technology. You're talking maybe pre-1917 kind of.
Well, no, this goes all the way back. The first discoveries of this stuff were all the way back in the railroad telegraph days. Right. And at the time when the Lone Pine earthquake occurred, I found by studying all the information was available there that they had a full understanding that earthquakes were actually underground lightnings and thunderstorms, and had devised a method of using telegraph wires as resistors to attempt to dissipate the energy, and all that information was edited out by the editor. Yeah, by the editor. And the editor is Einstein. Einstein is our editor.
Well, I mean, that all links into what Wheatstone's work with measuring the velocity of an electrostatic wave, right? Of pi over 2.
Well, the thing is there is no velocity at all. Velocity is not a dimensional relationship that is involved in this. You have to dispense with the concept of velocity altogether. Once you're out of that limitation of velocity, then you are outside of the limitation of your transmission obstacle, which is space. So you have to get space out of the equation because that's your obstacle. So velocity is something that overcomes space, but it's fighting it. So it takes this constant energy, and everything burns up before it gets to the end. You just bypass the concept of space and use a different reality. So the way out of that is what's called counter space. It's using space in a way that's conductive rather than resistive to what's going on.
So I mean, when you say the wave travels instantly.
Well, no, instantly. See, these are the things we have to get out of our language. Instantly means that there's no time delay. Well, this is not to say there's a time delay. If there's a time lag in one, there could be a time lead in the other. Or these things are, they're not all engineering realities yet when it comes to that level. That's because the experimentation has never been allowed. It's always been stopped every time I reach that point.
Well, I mean, I know that the academics already have a problem with 157% speed of light. I mean, I could only imagine their faces when you say to them, "Oh, well, you know, there isn't a speed."
Oh, I know. I've witnessed their faces. Those people. There's no point in even talking to them, because all you're doing is you're just revealing too much information, and then one of them's going to be a queek, and they're going to call somebody, and they're going to squid. Just stay away from those people. The biggest enemy in the understanding of electricity is physics. And right now, I'm really bitter about it right now, because I've been struggling for 3 or 4 days to get all the crap and the garbage and the ooze and the mucus and things that people will call a profanity word off all of the equations and relations to find out what in the hell's really going on inside this massive globule of mucus that they put around the whole understanding of electricity. And there's no way to mediate with those people. It's a religious fanaticism to them, and you can't make friends with them, and you shouldn't talk to any of this about them, because they'll geek, and then they will curse you forever, one way or another, whatever is within their power to do. So you just stay away from all of them. I've learned that the hard way.
I've heard the descriptions by these people, and they take very much the attitude of, well, break it with a hammer.
Right.
If you smack it around a lot and you work really hard to disprove it, and you can, then it's good. And I think sometimes it's not good. I think that you're trying to disprove something, you're trying to imagine that it doesn't exist, you're trying to invent a reason why it can't be, rather than investigate what could be. And Tesla was pretty clear in saying, hey, radioactivity is not caused by the instability of mass, but something external is causing that instability inside of the atom.
Well, that was at that time when Tesla spoke that. See, that's the beauty of Nikola Tesla. He's the guy that rose to the top in the movement that started with Michael Faraday and James Clerk Maxwell. Tesla is the guy that rose to the top. Him and J.J. Thomson. And today, everything they say is just completely. They don't even want to talk about it. So, but that's why there's no understanding of electricity whatsoever.
Well, I mean, what I found fascinating is some of the descriptions of Nikola Tesla predate most nuclear physics, but also contradict most of it. And
there's another very important person in this, and this is a person named Bach, and he was the one that discovered the radioactive disintegration process to begin with, and he also duplicated Isaac Newton's alchemical mercury.
Mm-hmm.
So Le Bon stuck to the idea that it was not caused by external causes, but then he was quick to say that nothing is definite or determined in the matter, and he was the first one to determine the radioactivity and all the things that we understand about it today. At its time, it was considered ludicrous, and they beat the guy into the ground. And then once somebody found out that they could make it work, they stole it and left him in the dirt.
Right. I mean, this is shot in the dark, but are you familiar with John H. Nelson's work in the 50s at RCA?
No. Oh, Nelson. Well, of course I am. I'm the next one of that. I continued.
Well, he was.
Why do you think RCA, was providing me with all these resources?
Right, because they wanted to correlate disruptions.
I was RCA. They made it all happen.
Yeah, I mean, but what Nelson was performing work in the 50s, correlating disruptions in shortwave radio activity with the angular position and alignments of other planets. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what my whole study was at Sonoma State University for 4 years. There was a period in which all the planets lined up. It's funny how nobody talked about it, but there was a lot of church activity going on that led to one of the most fantastic Bach organ concerts with a massive organ in San Francisco at the exact time when all the planets lined up, which was also at sunset with the full moon. Everything was in perfect alignment, and the media or whatever just shunned the whole thing on, but I had all my HF equipment going at Sonoma State at the time, and had been doing all the studies. I duplicated all the Nelson stuff there at Sonoma State over 4 years, and there was no doubt about it. And you can't talk to anybody that calls themselves a physicist or astronomers are even worse. If you want to get into deeper level, okay, you want to pull the deck plates up of the bilge and see what's down there that you don't want to look at. The astronomers will get even more wild and more dangerous.
Well, I mean, we know that the oceanic currents, that is the kinetic mechanical system of the ocean tide, that's regulated by the moon and our sun, and their alignment from east to west is when the effect is felt greatest, and that's called spring tide, and that brings floods.
Right.
I mean, can your system be used for the scientific study of that as an electrostatic phenomenon?
No, it's not really orientated in that. It's based on the currents of not the tides of water, but the tides of electricity.
Right, but I mean, if you've got a kinetic effect from this alignment east to west of the planets and the sun.
Well, the planets work differently. It's not a gravity thing. It's a capacitor thing.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is when all the planets are in the line, they become a set of series capacitors. And that set of series capacitors goes right into the sun. There's two basic electrodes in the solar system. There's a positive sun, which we call the sun. There's a negative sun, which we call Jupiter. And that's what polarizes this whole thing. And if all the capacitors are all lined up in all those lines of force, well, the tension on them is absolutely mind-boggling, because based on the theory of initial separation of matter, making the solar system, the voltages are stretching those lines of force that can't even be measured with numbers you can imagine. You have to use powers of 10.
Right, I mean, that's what Tesla
and then this thing, Tesla figured out a way to tap into it. Actually measure the voltage of the sun. That's what's fascinating. But he never describes how he did any of this stuff. The biggest problem with Tesla was that he didn't write. That was his sin, because he didn't write. Everybody else did. He should have done what J.J. Thomson did. He should have wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And he just kept it, because actually he was a victim in that regard of that capitalistic mind state, where all of a sudden now this becomes your property. See, that's where the poison comes in.
Path.
That's where the poison comes in, and that's what helped destroy science.
Yeah, I mean, if you own it, then you have rights, and those rights, you want to protect those rights.
Yeah, but see, that originally is not how it worked. Is everybody shared the information, and Heaviside was one of the most strongly vocal people against hoarding, which Isaac Newton was a classic example of hoarding. He was a hoarder of information. Really? And if anybody else came up with anything, he claimed he invented it first. There's all these difficulties when you're dealing with the human process, and that's why nothing ever gets to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got a question here somewhere that I'd written down. See if I can find it. I mean, you're an engineer, right, Eric? But as I understand, not every single organization involved in geological or scientific study is as interested about the Tesla, Alexanderson antenna technology that you've redeveloped. Now, isn't that a kind of socio-political problem more than a scientific one?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded question.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I keep telling people the best way to understand the position of what's going on is to read the first chapter of Jerry Vasilato's book, Secrets of Cold War Technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's layers of this. There's this organization fighting that organization. I mean, it's just so much more complicated. I am an engineer. So what an engineer does is something needs to be built. We already know what we want.
Right.
We want something.
Right.
We have obstacles and impairments and things to deal with. Part of the impairments are the fact that you can't get the magnetism to fit with the dielectricity. Other impairments are you got some mad bureaucrat somewhere, screwing the whole thing up. But they're impairments, the same impairments. What are called impedance. Unfortunately, the humans outdo the electrons in dragging the whole thing to stop.
Right. Right, and your definition of the electron is something that is consumed.
Yeah, it's the way that it interacts with the electrical system that we have now is it attempts to drag the energy to a stop, just like driving on molasses.
Yeah.
And consequently, that generates heat.
Mhm. Well, I mean, one question I did want to ask. You said that you developed a seismometer that was so sensitive that it could detect coyotes running around in the desert.
Well, that's taking a conventional electrodynamic pickup, but running it through a very special high gain amplifier that's stable, that doesn't have noise. Those are very difficult to develop. Sometimes it can take several years to develop something like that.
Well, I mean, you said is it really 1,000,000 times more sensitive than what the U.S. Geological Survey currently has?
Roughly that, yeah.
Is that right? I mean, that's amazing, surely. I mean, doesn't anyone want to fund that? Well,
I mean, it's not really a big deal. They could do it themselves. All you do is just put a 60 decibel amplifier in between the seismograph and what you're watching. But they're not. They're after coarse information. I'm after fine information. And then we're dealing with fine information. You have to have a human operator. There's got to be somebody like some Air Force guy in 1954. That stares at a radar scope for 4 hours, and then they got to change the shift so he doesn't start hallucinating. That's what I did at Landers. That's what I did at Landers. There's not a digital device that's going to do any of this stuff at all, and there's no humans that can handle, that level of attention span anymore. So it's all, that's where the complications lie. It's not so much of the technology. The amplifier is very difficult to design and build, but the thing is, I mean, any competent electrical engineer that knows how to build telephone repeaters or, even good audio amplifiers would know how to do that, but then those people don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. Because people buy it.
It's all this stuff. I just had to go through a whole ordeal today because of this pre-sabotaged materials coming in from China. So they sold these people a controller and a heating device. It's a 240 device, and then when these people got the thing, they found out that the heating device was a 120 volt device, yet the thing was sold to them as a 140 volt device, and it did the big burn down. You really believe me, there is no way that you can operate as a technical engineering person in this world anymore without everything burning in your hands while you're working, and some queek that's demanding that it's your fault, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't get paid. It's hopeless. The total seizure is coming upon us. From the engineer's standpoint, we're witnessing the onset of a total seizure. Of course, nobody wants to hear that.
Well, I mean, you've said it yourself. It's like the electrical company saying, "Oh no, don't worry, let it burn out. The insurance company will replace it," and that puts people's lives at risk potentially. I mean, it's very unnecessary.
The biggest threat that I face to my car right now, because of the harassment that I go on driving around with, first of all, something that's a car, and then the second, it's got, 2 8-foot antennas on the snout. They have a total height of 11.5 feet. That's already enough to get yourself killed in this country. And the thing is, the problem is, and this is what I got to watch out for, is some guy, that ate too many hot dogs in the morning, is out there in his Dodge Ram sucker, okay, and he's going to smash my car because he doesn't like it, and it doesn't matter because the insurance companies will not pay a dime for my car. They regard it as worthless, even though I could sell that thing in Japan right now for $75,000 cash. I've had Filipinos offer me $25,000 cash for the car in the parking lot.
You're kidding.
And this swine is going to smash the thing because in his pork pus high, in his Dodge Ram thruster, he's going to screw it up because it doesn't matter. He has insurance. Yeah.
It's the throat
How would you like
society.
to welcome to America? You should come here and experience it. Lots of fun. Of course, you got your own twisted reality over there where everybody's a spy and a sneak and there's a camera stuck up your rear end.
Yeah.
You know what they would do if my car showed up there? You know what they would do?
they'd probably take it apart.
Oh, they would. I would be arrested and get at least 10 years in jail, and they would put a bomb in the thing and blow it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I live in America.
It's hardly a Wardenclyffe, you know. It's a car with some antennas on, but over here, I believe that the frequencies that you're going to be using are all illegal.
Well,
Radio,
technically
really.
I'm ham radio, but then the thing is, you know, the car is like civil defense and tactical and all that kind of stuff. Plus, it's designed to sense the electromagnetic environment around it. No, it's just not happening. We can't have that. You know, I'm supposed to be, you know, munching on my hay at the trough like the rest of the cattle, and drive around as some bloated maggot that looks like something that, you know, popped out of a pimple. And that's, I don't live in that world, you know? That's why I live in the redwoods in my car. Or desert or something, you know? That's what it's designed to do. It just disappears into the bushes and it's gone because it belongs there. For some reason, the animals love it.
Yeah.
Because it looks
Probably
like them.
Because there's none of us.
The rats aren't welcome, though, but they're the first ones that want to move in with you.
Yeah.
It's great, though. I wouldn't live any other way. That's what America's all about. It was. Yeah. That's why you came here.
Well, I mean, Tesla always said observe nature and copy it. He wasn't exactly anti-nature loving, and you know, Steinmetz was kind of the same. He was very isolated.
Well, Steinmetz, you know, I mean, you know, if you read my four-quadrant theory thing, you know, Steinmetz was like some kind of spin-off from the Indians. That's why these people fled Europe to come here, because at that time America was the only place where you could do this stuff, and the powers to be always made sure that any achievements in America were always left out of the books.
Well, I mean, Steinmetz wasn't just a mathematician, was he? He was involved in quite a lot of different things on many different levels.
Well, he also did chemical science for General Electric. I think he was the one that came up with Lipdol and was a major contributor to the development of bakelite, which was the first plastic. And he was an experimenter, and him and Edison were like, you know, bosom buddies. God knows what those people were doing at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's books that you don't find written about their experiments of, you know, building time televisions, and that's the place it would have happened.
Well, I mean, what was it that Russian scientist said in Steinmetz's obituary? It's in the book Steinmetz, Socialist and Engineer.
Yeah.
Something like, General Electricity allowed Steinmetz to create.
Oh yeah, General Electric gave Steinmetz permission to create electricity from the square root of -1.
Right. What's that all about? That sounds interesting.
Well, if you heard, there was an interesting meeting of the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, and I forgot the year, and you can't find copies of that stuff anymore. It was, I think, in 1891, where all these guys got together and they weren't fighting. They left their capitalistic corporate baggage behind, and they had some kind of like party. It was polarized, where these guys just lit each other up, and Tesla was there, and Steinmetz was there. They were all there with Professor William Anthony was the president at the time, and the thing got more and more fantastic. And the stuff that started coming out of Steinmetz's mouth was, you know, this is things that, you know, the physicists would just be writhing and choking over what these guys were going. And then at the end of the meeting, Professor William Anthony stated that within 1 year we fully expected to be able to synthesize, I forgot how he said it, but to synthesize electrical energy and be free from the whole combustion thing.
Right, I mean, I've got a news article here that says, Earth electricity to kill monopoly, a way to harness free electric currents discovered by Nikola Tesla. That's from the World Sunday magazine, dated March 8, 1896. So, I mean, that basically says that free electricity is around the corner.
Well, you just confirmed my observation. I didn't know that.
Well, what happened to this electricity?
Einstein is what happened to it. Einstein.
So that would be the integrated.
Einstein was the guy that he was the hand grenade that blew the whole thing up.
I mean, would you say that this whole group velocity thing is what detracts from understanding the true nature of electricity, where when you look at electricity or the electron, you're really looking at something that could be an effect rather than a cause?
Well, the electron is a shadow.
Right.
The actual process is the Faraday tube of force that connects the electron to something else, which is the positive end of the situation, which is considered to be the nucleus of the atom. And then it's possible to close those lines of force upon themselves, and there's no physical matter whatsoever.
Right. When you say close them on themselves, what do you mean?
The two ends, because there's no tube can end. So if there's a situation, according to the Maxwell theory of electromagnetism, that the tubes can close on themselves, and then you have electricity with no electron and no conjugate positive nucleus. It's free. Electricity is free of matter.
Well, I mean, I don't really know much of anything, but I've performed some very basic experiments with just coils on a core, and I run the coils end of the primary to the beginning of the secondary, the end of the secondary to the beginning, and I apply DC positive to one of the terminals and DC negative to the other, and it produces these almighty radiant sparks.
Yeah, that's it. You charge that coil up with magnetism, and you try to break the circuit. All that energy comes back out as electromotive force and produces flames, fireballs. I mean, if you want to keep taking it, it'll produce things that will that like no human will ever have seen before, like the old DC switchboard operators experienced, and the guys that work on the submarines where there was real heavy DC currents and you have to switch them on and off. You get ball lightning dancing around. It's a scary deal.
Yeah, I mean, I've never hurt myself because I'm only using what?
Well, you could electrocute yourself.
Amps or something.
It's not 12 volts. When you discharge it, if you break the circuit perfectly, you will have infinite voltage, and all the time that 12 volts was charging that coil will come back at you.
Well, I mean, I noticed if I alternated between the two terminals with if I opened one of the two connections that I had, so that I could alternate one of the poles on them, it could produce a very large voltage on the meter. I don't know if it's real.
Well, it is real. It's real. You can put your hands across it and feel it. It'll make you fly.
I mean, I think I've got quite a bad static shock off it because I got a shock off with one hand. But I don't know enough about electricity like you do. I just the way I look at it is, if electricity isn't what they say it is, by running it in a way where it goes against itself, it's going to reveal to me perhaps what electricity consists of and the geometry of shapes that I can kind of reverse engineer to try and work out what it would.
Well, yeah, that's what you have to do. That's what I started doing as a child, is you just have to start fooling around. And then once you get to a point where you got kind of a feel for the physical material you're dealing with, well, then it's time to start, getting into try to find a theoretical understanding that's telling you the truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how I felt when I kind of discovered your work. Because, at school, I remember being taught the electron theory, and I was like, then I was told that perpetual motion didn't exist. I'm like, okay, that seems fair enough. You need energy from somewhere to make something move. Makes sense, but why is the electron moving around on its own? And why is valent metals have random motion of the electrons? Because if it didn't have that motion, that mechanical goings on in the atom, it wouldn't carry the electricity.
Yeah, I mean, there's all this. As soon as you get into a higher level of scrutiny, it all falls apart.
Yeah,
the whole thing falls apart.
It wasn't that I wanted to believe in perpetual motion or a different way of looking at electrons. It's just like I was sort of kind of saying, well, it looks like the movement of the zinc atoms combined with battery acid combined with some iron atoms. They're all moving, and then they produce a current from their motion. And if you could arrest the movement of one of those metals in the battery, you wouldn't get the electricity. So I was like, well, where does electricity come from? The motion of the atoms or their interaction? And I was kind of curious which one it was.
Yeah, well, these are all things that are were never really figured out. So it's a mystery to everybody. So they come up with these intermediate explanations or physical explanations. Right now I'm trying to go back and get the whole thing right from the start all over again. That's what I'm doing on a daily basis right now. So for the basic understanding of electricity, I have to go to J.J. Thomson and his book called Recent Theories of Electricity and Magnetism, and start to put that together. It's unfortunately, his mathematics is like really a kinky mathematics, and you use the letter A on one page for one thing, use the letter A on the next page for another thing, and fighting all this stuff. The dimensions don't add up. It's a real struggle.
Right.
But he has the basic concept down of how the ether works from the Faraday standpoint and how electricity relates to it. And then you can start to answer all these things. For me, I'm not so much interested in what's going on in the physical matter, because that's usually either going to corrode a hole through the side of the ship, or it's going to make a big giant blue blast plunge right through the insulator. And those are two things I don't want. I'm into the field aspect of electricity.
Okay.
That's where you have to start, is with the field aspect of electricity. Its interaction with matter is a subject of absolutely horrible complexity. Yet what physics has done is told us that electricity is strictly a phenomena of matter and nothing at all exists in the field.
Right.
So that's what I'm attempting to reverse. It started with Steinmetz. He was the first person to do this.
So you're trying to reintegrate the dimension of space back into the physics of electricity.
Exactly.
Okay. That's a bit of a mind twister, because I'm not very mathematically minded. I'm more of an artist, but I mean, I read your books. I think it was Introduction to Primary Coils and Wireless Power, and I mean, they might be a little bit outdated now from your recent research, but I was really fascinated by all of your descriptions of the Tesla magnifying transformer in there, and something called self-referencing odd resonance. And you said that was the key.
That's the key, is to create a transformer that has only one pole, the neutral.
Right, and from what I understood, by doing that, it allowed you to build up a recirculating current between the primary coil and the secondary.
Well, that's more how the energy moves in the system, but the end result is to end up with a transformer that has a winding on it that has only one pole, the neutral, which connects to the Earth. That's the key for the telluric transmission, because you can't run a ground cable to the moon or Saturn or Mars or the sun or anything. You have to figure out a way to reference to what the physicists call another dimension, and then transmit from that. It's like being able to push on something without a carpet or anything sliding out from underneath you. There's no reaction anymore. You can push with nothing to stand on.
Yeah, how do you have an infinitely strong lever?
Well, even that is still action reaction. Tesla and to some extent Steinmetz, but it was never really explicitly stated, was to have elimination of action reaction bipolar type situation. Tesla opened the door to that. He himself did not understand it. Nobody understood it. I was the guy that had to figure that out through experiment and mathematical analysis. I was the guy that figured that out. I have a fairly good theoretical basis and explanation for it, but now that I'm preparing for this next lecture, and I have to start all the way back at the beginning again, is in this area you can't be sure about anything.
No,
nothing adds up in the long run. Nobody has succeeded in producing a system of knowledge of electricity where everything adds up without finding itself, or dimensions don't add up, and this is what's been thrust upon me, and I'm attempting to do it.
Well, I mean, even the popular academics and scientists like Carl Sagan said, nobody really knows. I mean, it wouldn't be new science if it already existed. So you might have the oligarchy of science pointing at old laws from geniuses that were in the past ridiculed. And it's kind of ironic, because there's going to be geniuses in the present that are developing something new, and the same thing's going to happen. And in the future, all of the oligarchy then are going to be quoting your work. and there's going to be someone else then that's got something even newer, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a steady progression.
If you look at history, that's what it is.
It never changes.
Yeah.
There is, like Heaviside said, there is no finality. That's the whole flaw in this. There is no finality, and we have been led to believe that we have reached a condition of finality. And
well, I mean,
and
what
lo and behold, we are reaching a
do.
condition of finality, and it's not one that we're going to be very happy about. So we really kind of need a philosophical change in the whole deal here. And the fact that the sun's going dead and all this stuff looks like we're plunging in dark ages. So right now, I mean, we're just talking to ourselves, because everything else has got its course determined. This is the complication.
Yeah, I mean, once you build a society, you can't just take it apart. You can't just go, oh, we should have laid these roads more intelligently over the last 100 years, but we can't remove the 1 million houses that are in the way of us doing it properly, the way it needs to be done for infrastructure. And it's kind of like, oh, well, so we're planning the future, and then you try and take everything specific into consideration. You produce a lovely white paper about it, and everyone signs off and says what a brilliant idea it is, but it misses general things.
Yeah, so that's unfortunately that's kind of the chain around the ankle in the whole situation. So you can either ignore it or or resign yourself to it or whatever. But that's why you can't really expect any help in this stuff. And the thing is, the stuff that I wrote in the past 8 months here, that's working its way out now. If I would have wrote a book like this in 1899, I would have been world famous on the spot. On the spot.
Yeah.
Today, it's worthless. All it is me just in my hole listening to loud Bach organ music, jerking off with mathematics on a pad and paper. It's not meaning to anybody at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
Just a jerk off.
Well, I mean, I've listened to your stuff. I don't have any of the mathematical understandings that you do on the level that you do, but I am a musician, and I've been playing for like 20 years, and I've taken pieces of Bach's music, and I've split them up by instrument, and I've separated their root keys in 3, 5, and 7 hertz, and I've actually found that there is almost a new piece inside of the harmonics, and I got that from you. I don't know if you've ever tried to do something.
Well, I try to get set up for this stuff, but then I can't maintain the facility. So
yeah, I used the Pythagorean tuning system. I actually wanted to modify the hertz difference.
Well, I wrote a whole paper on that on the energetic form. I think it was called Versers from Steinmetz to Pythagoras backwards in time.
Yeah.
I think right now there's a Lone Pines writing 2 where that has been accumulated. Of course, now my brain's not as clear on it as I was originally, but it came. The inspiration of it came out of a book whose title was called "Music of the Spheres," and I think the author is Jameson, and that's the place. It reset me back to how I got back into this stuff at an early age, and I hadn't considered it anymore, and it's now led me to a whole new another area that it's kind of hard to describe, because of all the musical stuff you have to do in music. But I would really recommend that people read that book to understand what happened to music, because Bach was truly the Nikola Tesla of music.
Yeah, he had a pretty interesting thing about ratios and a very specific way of adding together harmonics.
Well, it's what's called sequence theory. And that's what this whole alternating current thing I wrote about is my interest, and that started when I first became acquainted with Bach, when I became in charge of an AM radio station at the Navy base I was working on in the Philippines. And I started, because I was, it was my baby. I had to do the programming and learn about music and the whole thing. And at that point, I see that Johann Sebastian Bach's music led to a comprehensive theory of three-phase power systems, but I never knew why until the past few months. And a very key thing in all this was reading that book, Music on the Spheres. It shows the whole history of the music, reminded me of all the things that I had learned in almost a 20-year period of studying music that I'd pretty much forgotten and things I'd taken for granted. And I really recommend it that anybody that's interested in the musical aspects of this ether reality, for the lack of any other word, read that book. There's two primary operatives in that before Bach were opposing forces, but nevertheless at the same direction was a person by the name of Robert Flood and his conjugate component Johannes Kepler. That's where the central focus of all of this exists, is between those two people on their opposing grounds, brought the whole thing together. There was a union at that point, and we're riding on the tail of that now. And the tail's almost gone. We've reached 1 over E. We've gone back into savage dark ages. There is no more age of enlightenment.
I mean, the people that aren't enlightened or might not know about music, what you're talking about is something called overtones, which is a technical classification for the way that subharmonics are added up between tones and semitones. And there's plenty of people that will listen to this, and they obviously don't have ears for it. If you will play something in a different key or in a different tuning system, they'll say it sounds the same. But if you actually inspect it with an equalizer, a harmonic equalizer, and frequency equalizer, you'll see that it produces very different overtones. And when you look at Bach's music in different tuning systems, it produces these resonances which you can, with a harmonic resonator, you can increase them, and it sounds like a kind of woo woo. There's like a second rhythm, is how I would describe it, interacting between two instruments, and it just defies explanation, really.
Well, that's interesting. I haven't particularly heard that aspect of it before, because I've been more into the time-dimensional thing of it. But that guy tapped into something. He tapped into something, and the powers to be were very anxious that once he was dead, that wouldn't happen again. And it was interesting. Right at the time in which Mozart had revived that knowledge, he ended up dead.
Yes, he never grew into a great musician because he didn't live long enough.
Oh, Mozart was his own, 6 years old. This guy, could have all fingers blazing at a harpsichord. I mean, that's. But the music had already been poisoned at that point. The classicism that led to romanticism, and romanticism, not as the death of music, but it's become the death of everything.
Well, I mean, the complexity that you would find in decorative Baroque music has never really been matched by anything since. I don't know why, really.
Well, don't underestimate George Frederick Handel.
Really?
Oh, no. And then if you want to get even deeper, Bach's music originated from his childhood experiences, and the fact that he was allowed the keys to the substation, which back then was the organ in the church, is he walked 200 miles round trip as a child with no money to sit at the keyboard with Dietrich Buxtehude.
Yeah. I mean, there's something
Dietrich
strange
Buxtehude
about...
is really the central figure in that music. And actually, it's easier for someone that's not really versed on this or doesn't have the mental acuity to focus. Because you have to listen to a piece of Bach's music 10 times before you can get it. But Buxtehude is more like the revival of all this that came like with the Beatles and all that type of stuff later in the 60s, where the basic Handel of Vivaldi form of music came back to life. The Beatles were, basically their music's no different than that of Handel. But Buxtehude gets back more into that primary force, and then there was one guy that originated the whole thing, and his name was Röntgen. He lived to be 100 years old. And Rankin was the one that conceived that whole system of music that Bach was the final, how would you say, the creator of or producer of in his writings. But Rankin never allowed any of his works to be seen by anybody, or nothing was written, and there's no record of it. But there is, I listen to it almost on a daily basis. Are the complete organ works of Dietrich Buxtehude, and that's for people that want to really get deep into Bach. That's the place to start, and then listen to Bach.
I mean, one of the things that fascinated me about music, but Bach in particular, is if I am outside, like away from the room that the speakers are in, I will actually hear different frequencies, different overtones. This is really quite unusual because you'll be listening to something outside and you'll think that it's a different piece of music.
Yeah, there's a directional component depending how the phases add up.
Right, and also how the amplitudes of the low frequencies get through certain structures but not others. So you get, if you've got many different instruments at different tonalities, then you'll get a different melody, perceived melody, where you are in position to it.
Okay, so at any rate, I'm kind of getting tired.
Oh, sorry.
I'm kind of getting tired right now, so...
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, Eric. I'm sorry for talking too much.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's great. But I've had like a really busy past couple of days, so... But I can keep going for a while, I mean, if you want to, but I'm kind of slowing down.
Oh, no, I'm... It's up to you, Eric. I just really appreciate you, talking about some of this. I think there's a lot of people out there that ask me and Aaron all these questions, and we don't know what you do.
Right.
And it's just sometimes it's just a case of, well, there's definitely something to this. I've experienced some of the things that you've described. I've tried to recreate basic effects with coils, but people say to me, well, what is this longitudinal wave? What is this non-electromagnetic wave? Does it really exist? Don't you think that Tesla was just this crazy guy that didn't really get it right? And that's what all the science academics say.
But they're saying, the thing is just don't even talk to those people. Why do you want to go down to whatever dismal neighborhood of your town or city and roust all the drunks out from underneath the freeway overpass and and tell them that that they're full of it? You got to look at them like that. There's no point in dealing with those people. They got their bottom reality. They're only going to be hostile to everything. Why involve them? Just leave them out of the picture. There's no reason to convince these people. We have to stop wasting our energy and compromising our security on trying to convince useless people of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the socio-political problem is those useless people are in control, and it's just a case of, what can we say? Where can we direct these ignorant people, to really get an idea of what Tesla was doing? I mean...
Well, they don't. There's no, but you know what I can do? I can give you a handful of Bibles, and I can send you to Iran. And I want you to get on a street corner and preach Jesus. Okay, now let's go ahead and try it.
I don't think that's a good idea.
It's not the thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't even get involved. That's the point at which we're at. Is you can't convince these people of this stuff. There's no point in it. It's dangerous to try to do it. Stay away from them, and just go in your own direction and don't get involved. You're not going to win these people over, and the useless people that are in charge of this society are not going to let go. There's no point in trying to educate them. All they're going to do is see you as a little ant, and they're going to smash their heel on you, and then they're going to continue on with whatever they have planned to do. So the only thing to do is to sit back and let entropy deal with it. and just keep moving forward, you know, just like the rats do.
It's a social condition.
Yeah, there's no way, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, the levels of fascism, I mean, you know, it's, to me, it's beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to engage in any reactive effort to this thing that's bigger than I am.
No.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I already, you know, did that in ignorance in the past, and I know it doesn't work. And I did it at a time where there were always still avenues in any corporation or any governmental organization where you could still move forward, but that all stopped. Pretty much.
I mean,
you know, I mean, I have a very interesting, there's something different here in this neighborhood. I don't know why or whatever. You know, I can't talk about it. I don't want to ask questions about it. Here it moves forward. So I found this weird little island where I can move forward with a lot of these things, but I got to be smart about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And not try to convince, you know, somebody that's one religion that they want to be another religion or whatever. Just got to stay away from all that. That didn't work a long time ago. Doesn't work for anybody. It's just don't bother with these people. You know, if you want to talk about this, you don't go to the so-called authorities. Or, well, right now I'm dealing with that in the electrical engineering world because I'm trying, you know, to keep connected to some reasonable source of power. And they're screwing that up.
Well, I mean,
nobody knows why. It's part of my job is to study this stuff, is what's going on and why is the whole thing being all screwed up. There's no logical reason for it. It's insanity.
What you're saying is that, hey, look, Tesla developed this stuff. He's shown it to whole crowds of people. He could call lightning on demand. It's in newspapers. It's documented. Just like that free energy around the corner conference in 1891. It's all there.
Right.
Right?
So, you know, in today's situation, from my standpoint, you know, if I came up with, and that's what I was working on in the shipyard in Richmond, and it's very expensive to have all these giant transformers and capacitors and the rest of this stuff.
Sorry.
I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars to set this stuff up and do these experiments to try to come up with a self-sustaining electrical system. You don't have to tease the establishment or whatever in the situation. Is what you do is you engage in an agreement with utility companies where you build this giant substation for them where they get, you know, 50 or 100 megawatts out and they can sell it and be in business, but at least it's not the rest of the screwed up reality.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, in the situation today, it has to be worked like that. And I found that this stuff doesn't really like to work, at least what I'm doing, does not like to work above the 500,000 watt level because the resistances and leakages and the smallness of the machinery tends to dissipate the energy. So I don't know, it all seems feasible to me, but then I'm finding that at least initially from other complications, that would be denied too, because I got a situation in Owens Valley now where the utility company is deliberately letting the hydro stations deteriorate and shutting them down. Each hydroelectric station generates between $1 and $10 million of electricity a year.
Yeah.
Why is it that they want to? The question is now, why is it they want everybody on this kind of centralized or power pool thing when there was a point not too long ago that Owens Valley was completely self-sufficient electrically and water-wise? And none of these things are complicated or expensive to maintain. I mean, you know, they were built in 1901, and you know, you change the bearings every 30 years, and you know, and every 60 years, you know, you bake the windings. I mean, big deal. That's a lot of cost.
Yeah, and I mean,
and you know, I had one switchboard operator intimate to me that he regards it as deliberate sabotage.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty shocking.
Well, you know, these are the things that make me profane, and that's why I have to watch myself on the air. But man, we're talking about frontline combat. You know, I mean, there's rockets flying overhead and 50 caliber shells, you know, ripping through everything around you.
Yeah.
And you're squirming like a salamander, but you're moving like a rat. It's terrifying what's going on. I have no words for it, other than, you know, a complete wig out. No, I have to
you...
kind of regulate my friends and associates, because they realize I'm like one of the last people on the planet that you can talk to that isn't going to take offense to something, because I consider myself probably one of the most offensive people in the world, and I take pride of it. But it's just like everybody's all freaked out.
That's what engineers are supposed to do, though.
I don't know. I better cut this off at some point before I make some powerful enemy somewhere.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you talking to us, and you've shared really tons of stuff. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the anonymous donor of $10,000 or the people that have been supporting you on Indiegogo?
Well, I mean, we're talking about infinite things. And not just by me, but a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's, when there was a meeting on this morning, I mean, there are no words to describe it. That's the complication. There are no words to describe it. So let's just try to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully we'll reach the $25,000 for you. I hope so.
Yeah, it looks like it might make it.
You never know.
Yeah, well, I work on mathematical curvatures, so. Well, I mean, that's, there's a rate of change to everything, and that tells you how it's going to work.
Yeah, let's hope for an exponent.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go. Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate